Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I'm really glad you're joining us today because we are looking at something truly fascinating. It's a concept that completely flips our traditional understanding of history right on its head. When we think of prosperous, winning civilizations, we usually think of them as invincible, right? We just kind of assume that wealth, extended peace, and technological advancement are the ultimate goals that absolutely guarantee a society's survival. But as you'll see, history tells a very different, highly counterintuitive story. The very things we strive for, they might actually be the seeds of our own destruction. Okay, let's dive into this and unpack the paradox of prosperity.
So let me ask you something. Think about this for a second. If you look back through the entirety of human history, what is the single greatest threat to a thriving civilization? Your mind probably goes straight to catastrophic events, right? Massive global wars, devastating plagues, maybe a meteor strike, or a sudden total economic collapse. And hey, it makes sense. Those are the loud, explosive events that completely fill our history books. But according to the historical data we're analyzing today, the real answer isn't some massive, violent external force. It's something far quieter, much slower, and honestly, infinitely more insidious. To really understand this, we have to look at the work of the renowned historian Will Durant. Durant basically spent his entire life studying one civilization after another, across all these different eras and continents. And he noticed a cycle, a completely unbreakable pattern. When a civilization is under immense stress, like maybe they're actively fighting for survival or facing incredibly harsh environments, the birth rate remains exceptionally high. People multiply. But, and here is the crazy paradox, as soon as those external enemies are defeated, as soon as a society enters an extended period of peace and prosperity, the birth rate inevitably drops, every single time. Our source material emphasizes that there is practically zero historical exception to this rule. Winning for too long literally triggers a biological decline.
Act 1. The biological threat.
Okay, so at its most foundational, elemental level, a civilization is just a collection of people. Without humans, you literally have no humanity. So consider this single pretty stark number, 0.8. And we're not talking about ancient history here. This is happening right now. This represents the estimated current fertility rate in South Korea. Now, for a population to just maintain its current size, to simply replace itself without growing or shrinking, you need a fertility rate of about 2.1. We are seeing a rate of 0.8. And while South Korea is the starkest modern data point out there, our sources highlight that this exact phenomenon is happening in real time, all throughout the modern, prosperous world. Year after year, the rate just keeps dropping. To put that into perspective, what a number like 0.8 actually means in practice is utterly staggering. The math is wild. If this demographic trend doesn't reverse, and I mean reverse significantly, South Korea is projected to lose roughly 60% of its entire population. Really think about that for a second. You're looking at a society that would retain only 40% of its current size. Entire cities, school systems, and infrastructure networks would just empty out. This is the very real biological threat of extended prosperity, and it's unfolding right before our eyes. Now, you might be thinking this is uniquely a symptom of the modern era, right? Smartphones, the gig economy, the 21st century. But consider ancient Rome, around 50 BC. Julius Caesar himself noticed this exact same demographic plunge during Rome's highly prosperous periods. He actually tried to pass laws offering financial incentives to Roman citizens just to have a third child. Later on, Augustus, wielding the absolute unchecked power of a dictator, pushed similar tax incentives. Fast forward to today, and our modern governments are desperately grappling with identical declines, trying the exact same tax credits and financial incentives. And the chilling historical parallel here? Those ancient Roman efforts were entirely unsuccessful. So the crucial point is captured beautifully in this one simple sentence. Rome fell because the Romans stopped making Romans. It really is that fundamental. Yes, history books talk a lot about Rome suffering from serious malaria epidemics and devastating plagues at the end of the empire. But here's the thing. They had survived those exact same plagues before. The difference at the end was that the birth rate had fallen far lower than the death rate. If a civilization doesn't at least maintain its baseline human numbers, no matter how much wealth or advanced technology it possesses, it's just going to disappear.
Act 2. The systemic threat.
But the biological threat is really only half of the prosperity paradox. There is a secondary, equally fatal internal threat we have to talk about. What happens to a society's rules, its laws, and its very operating structure when it experiences these long, uninterrupted periods without the forcing function of a major conflict? Well, it follows a very predictable life cycle. Step 1 is external stress. During times of conflict or hardship, laws are super lean. They're entirely focused on survival. Step 2 is extended prosperity. Peace sets in, things are good, and society gets comfortable. But then we hit step 3. Without a massive event, like a war, to serve as a sort of cleansing mechanism to wipe the slate clean, regulations just naturally accumulate over decades. Bureaucracy piles upon bureaucracy, which inevitably leads us to step 4, complete paralysis. The entire system basically grinds to a complete systemic halt simply because there are just too many rules to navigate. And this brilliantly illustrates what we can call the Gulliver concept. Picture the classic story of Gulliver's Travels, where the giant wakes up on the beach to find himself pinned completely to the ground. It wasn't one massive heavy chain that held him down. It was thousands of tiny, seemingly fragile strings. In our regulatory system, no single law is the villain. No single safety regulation or environmental check is the actual root problem. It's the millions of tiny laws combined that tie a society down so tightly it literally cannot move. Our source notes, this is exactly why building high-speed rail in America feels totally impossible. It isn't a failure of engineering, it's not a lack of funding. It is quite literally illegal to build it because you are restricted 6 ways to Sunday by an impenetrable web of rules. Ultimately, this creates what we can think of as a hardening of civilizational arteries. Just like plaque building up in a human bloodstream over a lifetime of eating rich food, laws naturally build up over a lifetime of peace. And eventually, the lifeblood of innovation and progress, it just can no longer flow. Everything becomes illegal. Everything gets tied up in endless litigation. The civilization entirely loses its ability to build, adapt, or move forward. It just calcifies from the inside out.
Act 3. Fighting the Matrix.
So if prolonged success naturally breeds demographic collapse and regulatory paralysis, is there a way out? Let's take a look at a proposed solution to this massive bureaucratic bloat, and maybe more importantly, the inevitable fierce resistance any such solution is totally bound to face. Think about the computer science concept of garbage collection. In programming, this is an automatic memory management feature that goes in and deletes unused data so the whole system doesn't just crash. Well, our source suggests we desperately need this exact thing for human governance. We need an active, dedicated government efficiency mechanism designed strictly to systematically remove and delete these accumulating, paralyzing regulations. And as a neutral data point drawn straight from the sources, this isn't just some theoretical philosophy. Discussions around creating an actual efficiency commission to do exactly this have taken place recently, with figures like Donald Trump being mentioned in talks to implement it. The whole goal would simply be to shrink the government back down to a functioning size. But, and this is a huge but, here is the massive roadblock. You can't just delete the rules without a massive fight. The source material describes what happens next as an antibody reaction. Think about biology again for a second. When a foreign element enters a human body, the immune system immediately floods the area with antibodies to attack and destroy the invader, right? Well, bureaucracies act exactly like a biological organism. The very moment you introduce a system designed to delete their rules and shrink their power, the established matrix views you as a mortal threat. The existing system will automatically mount a massive, coordinated defensive response to protect its own existence. Which leaves us with a final, incredibly profound question. Can a civilization willingly rewrite its own code? Can a prosperous society, fully aware of its own declining birth rates and its own suffocating regulations, successfully implement the painful changes needed to survive? Or is the matrix always going to fight back just a little too hard? Really, can any thriving society ultimately survive the lethal side effects of its own success? I want you to really think about that as you look around the world today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope these concepts helped clarify the hidden forces that are actively shaping our history and our future. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you next time.